We begin our service remembering Marc Price as we look into the book of Psalms for comfort. There it is written, Esayenai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the eternal maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. Behold, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. Adonai yishmor tzeitecha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. May the Eternal guard your soul in your going and your coming, now and forevermore. Adonai roi loech sar benodesha yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenachaleni, nafshi yeshovev. Eternal God, you are my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff you comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. You return us to dust, you decree, return you mortals. For in your sight 1,000 years are as yesterday when it has passed as a watch in the night. You engulf us in sleep. We are like grass that renews itself at daybreak. At daybreak it flourishes anew, at dusk it withers and dries up. The span of our life is 80 years and 10, or given strength 80 years. But the best of those years have trouble and sorrow. They pass by speedily, and we are in darkness. Teach us, therefore, so to number our days, that we may attain a heart of wisdom. May your favor, O God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it may long endure. Death has summoned our beloved Marc B. Price. Our souls crowd unto you, O God. What are we? Are we the creatures of dust whose destiny is but to return to the dust from which we came? The ancient sage has taught us the spirit of the human being is the lamp of the eternal. Not even the darkness of death can extinguish the light which the Eternal has kindled in the sanctuary of the human spirit. Therefore, O God, we thank you in this solemn hour for that which was deathless in the life of our cherished Marc, and which is now revealed to us in all of its beauty. For his love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship which we shared along life's path and which still continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and of his mind, which brought us joy and happiness and now have become a precious heritage of the Spirit. For all these and more, we give you our praise. Grant unto us, O God, the strength of all the generations of our people, who in the face of bereavement proclaimed, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Still, blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us our beloved Marc Price, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Blessed be the name of God now and forever. The Dalai Lama once said, a simple smile, that's the start of opening your heart and being compassionate to others. The Talmud says, a smile is the opening to the heart. If a dentist is charged with making sure that a person can confidently smile, then Marc Price was not only an excellent dentist for his patients, but even more so, he made sure that every day was worthy of a smile. For indeed, it was the opening to his heart. Marc had a simple smile. It came gently and easily to his lips. He had a convincing smile, sometimes a mischievous smile, always a friendly smile. And clearly his smile was the start of opening his heart and being compassionate to others. And even more so, Marc took great joy in making other people smile with his sense of humor and with the interest he always showed in other people's lives. I met Marc Price in my early years as a rabbi. Although I was not on the trip to Israel that he took with his family, I remember well that upon their return, there was always a rowdy group of people who would all gather together in the hallways of the temple as they celebrated occasions with their families. Laughing and jostling each other, Marc was an instigator of the fun. Apparently that went back to his early years as a young boy. Marc was the son of Mimi and Philip Price and was born the same year as the state of Israel, 1948. That would have made him 74. Born at Mount Sinai Hospital, raised in University Heights, he was lucky to graduate from Heights High School in 1966. Already a fun-loving teenager, he was part of the BAT high school fraternity. We're not sure what those letters stood for, but Marc and his friends could have defined it as bad, active, and trouble. Sally, only 19 months younger than Marc and close to him all their lives, remembered the day she heard some commotion above her at their high school and looked up to see Marc jumping off a balcony, apparently on a dare by his gang. There's some debate whether his fear of heights came before or after that incident. His counselors apparently advised his parents to send him far away out of town, away from those boys, so that he could enjoy some college years and embrace his innate intelligence. Again, family rumor has it, however, that the school shut down shortly after he left, raising the question of his role as the cause of the shutdown. But no, better than most, Marc understood that a smile was the way to get away with trouble. Marc was academically very smart and possessed that kind of ingenious, determined way of figuring things out too. The story of how he convinced his mother to forget about a family car in favor of a GTL stick shift is an example of his very persuasive powers. And those persuasive powers would work wonders on Gail too. They met when she caught a ride up from OSU with a mutual friend. After Marc had decided to leave dental school during those difficult years of the late 1960s, when the rigidity of professional schools and the political climate clashed for many, after a stint in Atlanta selling leather goods, he returned to Cleveland where they met again. This time he was with those same high school buddies, but it became clear that this woman was going to fit into his life and enhance it. Handsome in his usual outfit of a tucked-in plaid shirt with jeans and always with a belt. Engaging because he took an interest in what you were doing and encouraged you in your career. Charismatic in the way he made you feel like you were the queen, even before you were surrounded by your subjects of the boys. Marc quickly won your heart. Marc and Gail were married in 1973, and shortly thereafter, with her good influence, they moved to Columbus for Marc to finish dental school. Marc embodied his profession. He was kind and caring and hated to inflict pain on anyone. Many of his patients will recall that 30 seconds into a procedure that might last an hour, Marc was already starting to tell you it's almost over. Generous and accommodating to both his patients and his staff for his 38 years of practice in the profession. He was well respected by his colleagues, and he also inspired and mentored new dentists, especially his own niece, Sasha. When Marc wasn't practicing dentistry, he had many other interests and hobbies to keep him busy. Most importantly, he and Gail created their family in quick succession. Zach was born in 1980, Robbie in 81, and then that was about the time that they also moved from University Heights to the home that they planned and built just in time for David's arrival in 1984. Marc and Gail, you were a team. You were a team who enjoyed doing everything together, from the simple walks you'd take, often with a dog or two in tow. Marc somehow conned you into believing that second dog was only for homing, apparently, and it could go back to its owners whenever you wanted. But instead, you became its special owner, and that dog remained loyal to Marc, sitting at his bed till the day of his passing. Marc had other interests which he had to slowly introduce to you as well, Gail. When he bought his first motorcycle, apparently he left it in Sally and Howard's garage for quite a while until just the right moment to tell you about it. He'd take long rides with his friends a few times a week and enjoyed the look. He loved being in nature. I think we were all at a costume party once where the two of you came dressed as bikers, even though Gail would only ride that motorcycle once. That was enough. He liked having your date nights. It was time to try new restaurants where Marc the schmoozer was in rare form. Picking up on a Larry David line, he was the stop and chat while you were the walk and wave type. Marc could chat with anyone, and he did. He'd know the whole story of the waiter while you waited to place your order. That was his charm, too. He treated everyone as if they were the most important person, regardless of station or stature. From a casual run-in to being the life of the party, he made you feel like he had all the time in the world for you. Mostly the two of you, Gail, enjoyed each other's company and watching your family grow up together. Marc invested a lot of his time in each of the kids, teaching them how to golf. And Zach, you took to it right away from the age of 3 and kept it going to master the sport way better than he did. Marc was busy instilling a sense of team into his boys. Busy with 3 active boys, he enjoyed playing catch in the backyard, coaching each of your teams from t-ball to baseball and basketball, even soccer. Marc took you to all kinds of sporting events, particularly the kind that would make history, like the first game at Jacobs Field and the World Series that we almost won. He took you to basketball games at the Coliseum, especially so that you could see his fantasy twin, Marc Price, playing for the Cavaliers. Marc invested a lot of his time in each of you, and he taught you to invest in yourselves and become entrepreneurial from a young age. A collector of many things like coins and stamps and elaborate train sets and more, he encouraged you in your sport cards collection and even helped you to set up your own card show in Orange. As your interests grew, he was your most generous backer financially and with great support. Most importantly, Marc taught you to invest always in Team Price. Your commitment to your father always, but especially these last 5 months since his diagnosis, traveling in often to be with him has been admirable. Boys are each going to share some of their memories, things that they learned from their father, but suffice it to say, Marc was a man's man. He modeled for these 3 young men how to be good, how to be devoted to your family, and how to make your careers important in your lives. Many of his speeches, which he was always want to make, began with the words, "Your mother and I are very proud of you." Marc made time for the people and things that were important to him. He wasn't much of a traveler. He seemed to resist going on trips in favor of tinkering with the things around the house. But once you got him out, he enjoyed himself and was glad to have the time to spend with his family. He traveled to many parts of the country to be with the boys, especially to take you to national parks. Gail, you would often hawk him to take off time. He'd resist, but finally you negotiated a trip to see Zach during his year abroad. We could travel to London and Italy and France, a visit to Seattle, extended time in British Columbia and Vancouver, but mostly to see David. And for Robbie, it was meeting up in New York, spending a couple days at the Jewish Museum exhibit of Leonard Cohen that remains a special memory. Trips to solidify your Jewish identity, especially the Israel trip, were important to Marc. He'd been raised with Judaism as an important part of his family and made sure that it was an important part of your home. I can remember periods when Marc and Gail made it a regular part of their lives to be at Friday Shabbat services. It was clear to me as I visited Marc last week that saying the Shema was an important part of his soul. Apparently, he would also go to say it with others who were close to their final days as well. Marc knew his days were numbered from a terrible cancer that was ravishing his body. No doubt he wanted to do another big project outside this spring, as he had so many springs before, building things just by the feel of it, having them come out perfectly. The greatest project that Marc did get started and felt his way through beautifully was to create a loving and caring family. Got to attend the weddings of Robbie and Takoko, of David and Marnie. He looked happy in the pictures that are displayed around your house. And his grandchildren, Sydney and Lincoln and Mackenzie, are each old enough at this time to have sweet memories of Marc, healthy and vibrant, with that full head of hair. Memories which will no doubt bring a smile to their lips when they recall the way he played with them. But it's for little Hayden that we'll have to be sure to share the special memories of Papa. Marc Price touched many lives with his smile, and the smile he helped to shape for others. The lessons of his life he leaves to all of us, to Gail, to Zach, to Robbie, and David, to Sally and Howard and all of your families. to friends who are gathered here, we pray that memories of Marc's smile and the laughs that he shared with you will continue to bring a smile to your face as we now join with the sages to declare, Zichrono Livracha. May his memory continue to be your blessing. We're going to hear from a few members of the family. And first, I'd like to start by just sharing with you a few words that Emily, his niece, wrote. Marc, you always took being the incredibly cool, fun uncle to a whole new level. You were the true epitome of compassion and fun. For everyone who knew Marc, they most likely would agree. He always brought so much joy to everyone around him and was one of the most enjoyable people to talk to about absolutely anything. I attribute this to his amazing, unique ability to make people feel so special as he took a sincere interest in their lives, whether they were a family member, a friend, or a complete stranger. His love and immense kindness extended to all, people and animals alike. A day would not go by where he wouldn't happily take his dogs for a walk, pet and play with them, and take care of all their needs. To say that he was somewhat of an animal whisperer is a complete understatement. His dogs would forever shadow him. Many of us thought that if he had not pursued dentistry as his primary profession, he would have been an excellent veterinarian. Though he did not fall short when it came to his many talents and expertise. Besides being a great dentist, he was incredibly handy and very detail-oriented. He consistently created his own projects, especially outdoors, gardening and landscaping, building onto his beautiful home. One of the many highlights of going over to his house was seeing the tremendous atmosphere he thoughtfully and meticulously created with his model trains. He did this with much passion and enthusiasm as he strategically planned this world which spanned his entire basement. The intricate navigation of how the railroads intersected, the arrangement of the trains, the placement of the trees and the people, etc. Marc's incredibly warm, welcoming nature and his knack to constantly make people laugh is what made everyone want to spend as much time with him as possible. He was always the life of the party, and if he was there, you knew you would have a great time. We have so many wonderful memories together that I'll never forget, and I hope to share some of these experiences with my kids one day. Marc always loved all different kinds of cars, and I remember growing up thinking that he had the coolest cars I had ever seen. When I was about 15 years old, he offered to let me drive his green Chrysler Sebring convertible. I felt so honored. He knew that I always loved convertibles, and we had an absolute blast. So much of who Marc was and what he held sincerely close to his heart was about making people smile, laugh, and bring happiness to people's lives. The most important thing to Marc was his family. His family was his whole world, and he especially would have given anything to provide and contribute to their happiness. In fact, he was known for giving items away because there was someone who was more in need, he would say. His genuine selflessness and service for others is truly inspiring, a legacy that I will try to inspire in my children. Time with his family was the greatest gift, and even with that, he was not greedy. Marc, you always were such a large part of my life in the best way imaginable. You have touched all of our lives in such beautiful ways. And Emily writes, I will forever miss you. Love you always. I'd like to invite Howard to read Sally's words. And Stuart Garson is going to share some words on behalf of his friends and all of you. And then we're going to hear from David and Robbie and Zach.
So hopefully you can hear me. So the first thing Sally and I want to acknowledge is Gail, how hard she worked these last few months, and how she just dedicated herself completely to helping Marc, as did the boys. Closer?
Let me try something here.
How's that? There we go. All right, so I'm going to start again. The first thing we want to do is acknowledge Gail, how hard she worked over the last several months, and how she dedicated herself completely, giving literally all she had to helping Marc, and how the boys came as well. So that's the first thing. The next thing Sally and I want to share are 3 facts about Marc, and they're going to echo things you've already heard. So fact number 1, that there's no one we know who had more friends, and really more true friends than Marc. Many of them going back, I can see, that he knew for a lifetime, and that are here, that he held close. So that's fact number 1. Fact number 2, about the smile, and a bit here, a little more lighthearted. And you gotta just admit this, that there's no one who could screw up the telling of a joke in a more endearing way than Marc. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. So over the years, Marc knew and told hundreds of jokes, and every one had 2 words in them. Those 2 words were "no wait." Okay, and it went sort of went like this. Marc would begin the joke, and he'd deliver the punchline, except it was in the wrong place. So he would stop, realize his mistake, start laughing, say, "No, wait," and start over, back at the beginning, and it would happen again. And pretty soon, everyone would start laughing along with him. You know, you love someone when you enjoy the telling as much as the joke itself. Eventually, he'd tell the joke in the right order, and here's the thing. It really was a pretty good joke, and it would make us laugh again. So in a pun that Marc would enjoy, we all got 2 laughs for the price of 1. So his third fact, this one has 2 parts. If there's a dictionary that aligns people with words, there are 2 where you will find Marc first. The first word is generous. Not just for Marc, but really this is generations of prices, including his sons that are here today. So I'm going to repeat a story that actually I told at the service for Sally and Marc's father, Phil, over 20 years ago. One time Marc came up to me and said how much he liked the shirt I was wearing. I told him he probably should, because it was once his. Okay, he had worn it, I don't know, a year or 2, tired of it and decided no more, and gave it to his father, Phil, who wore it. And I saw it one time and said, "Phil, nice shirt." And he said, "Take it." And he gave it to me. So you know the expression, you know what I'm gonna say. Give you the shirt off his back. And Marc and Phil and the boys, I mean, it's literally true, he did. People here know there's nothing Marc or any of the Prices wouldn't do for their family and friends. It's just in their DNA. So in closing, the second word where you'll find Marc in this special dictionary, and you know, again, you know what I'm going to say, is the word mensch. It's trite, I know, to call someone a mensch, but Marc embodied that word. If ever it fit somebody, it fit Marc. You know, why so? Well, Sally can't recall him ever saying a bad word about anyone. How at every occasion he was welcoming to all and made every person feel special. This was true even at our Pesach last month at Marc and Gail's house. Somehow Marc found the energy to not only come to the table, which was miraculous, but to toast everyone and even toast life itself. It had to have taken a heroic effort for him to do that. Speaking of heroes, Sally told me that Marc was always her champion. How when they were young kids, if Sally was crying, Marc would rush over to their parents and ask them to help her. Okay. Again, you've already heard what Emily thought of her uncle, and well, Marc also was an early mentor to Sasha for her dental career. For Sally and me, he even handmade our wedding rings. So he was an amazing guy. So everything we hear today describes Marc the Mensch. May we all lead such good and generous lives. Stuart, all yours.
I am honored and shattered that Gail and her sons asked me to speak to all of you today about Marc. You must also know and appreciate how much I never wanted to be here for this reason. For those of us that loved Buddy Little, this is a profound death in the family. I've known Marc for 67 years, and he became my closest living friend. He was a character of the first order. You can't invent a Marc Price, because he has a rare cosmic gift that presents itself to those of us fortunate enough to find ourselves momentarily on the same wave. His friendship was a gift filled with wonderful moments strung together, and what wonderful moments we all had with him. Ponce de Leon erroneously and mythically was searching for the fountain of youth in Florida. He was in the wrong place and 500 years off. The fountain of youth was Marc Price, and anyone who spent time with him became younger for the experience. No one could animate your inner 14-year-old like Marc, and I'm afraid we will all age more rapidly in his absence. Marc was part Eddie Haskell, but without the meanness. As a kid, he could play adults like a Stradivarius with his left hand, while pulling the school fire alarm with his right. His ability to deny wrongdoing was without peer, but his trademark Cheshire grin betrayed him every time to those who knew him best. Before the internet, personal computers, social media, cell phones, and caller ID, there was Marc Price. He invented and perfected the home delivery pizza caper. You know, where at any moment a dozen unsolicited pizzas might show up at your house. While the father would scream in the background, "It's that Price kid, I know it." This is neither the time nor place to present a litany of Marc's greatest juvenile antics. And those who have an anecdote or two, please consider writing them down and sharing them with Gail and her boys. Marc's high school academic performance, as alluded to, was, let's just say, unremarkable. His parents, Mimi and Phil Price, rightfully determined that Marc needed a fresh start away from his peer group, and they sent him to Tarkio College, a Presbyterian school in Tarkio, Missouri. Marc applied himself and did very well and was accepted to Ohio State Dental School in the fall of 1970. Regrettably for Marc, he could not have picked a worse time or place to start dental school and reunite with so many of his friends and their bad habits who were starting their last year at Ohio State. Marc was in a rigorous, disciplined professional program with a dress code. He had to wear a tie to his classes, no facial or long hair was allowed, and he was in dental school from 8 to 5 every day. On the other hand, the rest of us at Ohio State, well before COVID, were already attending classes remotely from our couches where illicit substances were inhaled and consumed, while the big questions of the day, like where to eat and how do we get off the couch, were debated. I've often commented on that time how I always wanted to go to college and got really close. But Marc never had a chance. What could go wrong? Well, in short order, Marc grew an afro, a mustache, beard, dropped out of dental school, moved to Atlanta, joined a startup leather goods business where he was making belts by hand. Mimi and Phil applied for early admission to Montefiore and were rejected. Sally, I know you're an artist, but as Marc's sister and best witness to his childhood and youth, you must write the book, Marc Price, The Early Years. And I believe there is someone in the family who will even publish it. I was there the night Marc first met Gail in the summer of 1973 in the front yard of a house that Gary Jacob, Marc, and I were renting in University Heights. We were playing volleyball in the front yard at the time, and Gail showed up with her posse, Terry and Cookie. It was a fateful evening for Marc. In a very short time, Gail straightened him out, got him back into dental school. Marriage followed. Within the year later, a thriving dental practice, 3 wonderful boys, now men, Zach, Robbie, and David. Gail was Marc's North Star, life partner, wife, and always his warden. Could Marc be exasperating? That's not a question, but a factual statement. His impulsive purchases were legendary. Does anyone remember Duncan, that cute little Great Pyrenees that Marc brought home to Gail in their charming small university house when Zach was an infant? Duncan grew up to become his own zip code. And the only thing he lacked was a gear shift. Speaking of driving, excuse me. Many believe Marc was a bad driver. That's not accurate. To be a bad driver, you first have to be a driver. What Marc did behind the wheel of a car could never be confused with driving. He just wasn't present when behind the wheel. There was just too much going on all around him to be concerned with driving's details, like the car in front of him, beside him, behind him. Marc had no sense of direction. He lived his entire life on the east side of Cleveland, and yet he could get lost leaving his driveway. Anyone who drove with him became an involuntary GPS and lane change warning device. Marc, where are you going? Turn here, turn that. Marc, red light. Marc, stop the car. Please, I'll drive. There is not a roller coaster at any amusement park that could simulate or capture the thrill and utter terror of driving with him. He literally had a body repair shop on speed dial in Bedford Heights. I asked Marc last year for the name of his body shop. I told the 2 owners that I was there on Marc's recommendation. They asked me, how's Doc doing? We haven't seen him for a while. I said, just wait, it's only a matter of time. Could Marc tell a joke? No, not even close. No one, and I mean no one, could mangle and torture a joke like Marc. He would start with the narrative, then prematurely stumble into the punchline, then say, no, wait, and then backtrack to a vital missing piece of the narrative and re-deliver the punchline. By the end of the exercise, you were exhausted and could be halfway through Moby Dick. But that was the best part of his joke telling. The joke was in his telling and fractured delivery that made it so funny. The punchline became irrelevant. One of my personal favorite stories about Marc was about 15 years ago. We were on vacation with him and Gail in Puerto Vallarta. We rented a nice little villa in the hills. We were just chilling for the week. And Marc is hockeying me to Chinook every day to go ziplining with him. It's important to note that Marc suffered from schtilkus. For our Gentile friends here today, that loosely translates to ants in your pants. He had to be in constant motion. After 3 days of his incessant desire to zipline, I relented and said, okay, let's go. We drive to this place in the jungle, we take a half-hour orientation course, get fitted with helmets and other gear, and then proceed to a series of 15 lines that get progressively longer and higher as you climb up from each run. The first line is like a bunny hill, which is about 50 feet long and 25 feet high, and Marc is right behind me. After I complete the first line, I walk up to the next run and wait for Marc. He's nowhere to be found. I look down, I peer down at the bottom of this hill, which is no way to get down. I don't even know how you would get down from there, and I see Cheryl doing this. As relayed to me later by Cheryl, Marc frantically ripped off his zipline gear after the first run. An hour later, I rejoined the group after my Himalaya jungle adventure, and Gail and Cheryl are enjoying tropical drinks, and I'm covered in grease from the zip lines. I say to Marc, "What happened to you?" He said, quote, "I forgot that I'm afraid of heights." I said, "You picked one hell of a time to remember." That is a true story. Marc's superpower was his likability. Meeting him and liking him were a simultaneous experience. Anyone who did not take the time to know him missed one of the great opportunities of their life. He was a Renaissance man, interested in everyone and everything. He loved to tinker, especially through the tulips of his garden. He was always engaged in some project, and when he put on his knee pads and utility belt, you knew it was going to get ugly. Speaking selfishly, I will miss him in more ways than I can imagine. I'm grateful that I had him for so many years. Marc's friendship was like the quintessential four-leaf clover. Hard to find and so lucky to have. A couple of years ago, I sent Marc a book by Brian Greene, an astrophysicist at Columbia, titled Until the End of Time. One of Greene's arguments is that consciousness is matter made up of subatomic particles and governed by the laws of physics. In other words, consciousness transcends our physical manifestation and moves on into the cosmos. If that weren't enough, then Greene springs this megaverse thing on us, where there are multiple universes where you can be simultaneously present in different places in time, like subatomic particles. And at this point, I will refer all of your questions to Howard Ross, the one bona fide rocket scientist among us. But I bring this to your attention because Cheryl and I were privileged to see Marc about 2 weeks ago to say, "We'll see you later." My last request demand of Marc was that wherever he goes into this cosmos thing, I expect him to drop a sufficient quantity of cosmic breadcrumbs so I can track him down when my time comes. Marc is taking a big chunk of all of us with him, just as he is leaving a big piece of himself behind with us. However, I told him that I expect my piece to be returned when I catch up with them and we can pick up where we left off. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank you, Gail, for the wonderful care and love you provided to Marc these past months. We saw your pain, we felt it, and yet we could do nothing to alleviate it. You lived through this most difficult time, and at times impossible situation. You were dealt a tough hand and you played it better than anyone could have possibly done. As for Marc, during his ordeal, he demonstrated magnificent strength and courage for us, as he knew how we were all holding our breath and teetering on that brink of this can't be happening. He called me on March 2nd when he received his devastating news that the treatment was unsuccessful and there was nothing further to do. Marc chose to live with courage over despair and strength over victimhood. In these last months, our buddy Little grew to be seven feet tall and became someone you admired as much as loved. Zach, Robbie, and David, your dad, was so proud of you. I know because he talked about with you all the time on the golf course. When we were on the golf course, what we did was anything but golf. Certainly as it relates to me. You carry his wonderful name, And his legacy is embedded in your lives. Your father's good name is the greatest gift that he bestowed upon you. So carry that price name with the pride and dignity it deserves, because to so many of us, it's priceless. So Buddy Little, you can run away to adventures unknown in that megaverse, but you can't hide from us as long as we have our memories. Your blessed memory is well guarded by Gail, Zach, Robbie, David, Takako, Marnie, Sally, Howard, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, Cooper, and the rest of us, your friends, will never let your memory depart. And since I have watched The Wizard of Oz with my 2.5-year-old granddaughter Izzy more times than you can imagine, I will quote another prankster who wisely stated that a heart is not judged by how much you love, but by how much you are loved by others. Buddy, we are all first-hand witnesses to that truth and your big heart. You lived a beautiful life, extremely well done, and not long enough for us that we're greedy for so much more. You are forever loved and will remain that way in our hearts for all our days. As Clarence the Angel noted to George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, success is equated with a person's ability to have friends. And that, dear buddy, makes you a very wealthy man indeed. So until we meet again, I'll appropriate my last words from George Bailey's kid brother to my big brother, Buddy Little, the richest man in town. God bless you, buddy.
Excuse me. My dad was a very special person, a real people person, someone who everybody loved. As I thought over the past several weeks how I'd try to describe such an extraordinarily wonderful person and eulogize what he meant, what made him so special, I came up with 3 character traits that are repetitive to what we've heard today, but that all end up intertwining with each other and together creating a truly special person that I was so proud to call my dad. The first characteristic is my dad's unparalleled, friendly personality. I mean this when I say it, nobody disliked my dad. He was beloved by his friends, family, acquaintances, patients, gardeners, handymen, everybody. I'm not kidding, everybody. He would make friends with everybody. He always wanted to learn about people's backgrounds, their expertise, or really anything that they wanted to talk about. My dad loved to meet people, befriend them, make them feel comfortable, at ease, and special. He would chat up every single waiter, waitress, valet, the dog groomer, whoever. He would strike up a conversation with just about anybody, and he always knew just what to say to them. I always really admired that. It's a truly special quality. I'm pretty sure that's how my dad got his nickname, Buddy, because he really was everybody's buddy. The next trait was my dad's curiosity. He loved to learn, and when he became passionate about something, he dove deep into it. Whether it was when I was really young and he was dedicated and into weightlifting, winning medals for his age and weight class in the clean and jerk, or when I was in elementary school and he built the most epic electrical train set in city that even Mr. Rogers would be envious of. Or in the last few years, as he became deeply interested in learning about Johnny Cash, Leonard Cohen, and the teachings of the Maharishi. I think this same curiosity was behind his interest in meeting people and learning about them. He was interested and curious in everybody's story. Lastly, the final characteristic I'd like to share about my dad is his endless drive to help. Friends, his family, especially my brothers and I, his patients, animals, everyone. He was the definition of a mensch. When my mom and him came to Chicago to stay with our two older children, Lincoln and Mackenzie, when we were at the hospital and our daughter Hayden was born, we came home to a spotless and streak-free windows. My dad spent a full day hand washing and cleaning every window in our house, inside and out, just because he just wanted to help. And throughout my life, I remember people coming up to me, sometimes people I really didn't know, telling me they were his patient and they absolutely loved him. He was a great dentist, don't get me wrong, but they weren't telling me their story about my dad because of his dental skills. They loved my dad because he made them feel comfortable during an incredibly uncomfortable time. No one likes drilling or having pointy objects shoved in their mouth. My dad was so thoughtful and gentle and empathetic with his patients, and really with everybody he interacted with. He was beloved by people from all walks of life, and I feel so proud to call him my dad. And now, today, we say goodbye to him, at least physically, but emotionally, we'll never say goodbye. We'll keep his memory with us forever. Seeing my dad play with my children as their papa made me so happy, and they loved him. I'm so grateful to have those memories and the pictures of those fun times, to keep those memories preserved forever. Dad, I love you, and will think about you every day, and always make you proud. May your memory forever be a blessing.
So these are tough acts to follow. So many wonderful things have been said. A lot of themes that I have thought of as well. One thing that I didn't think of was Howard mentioning he's a mensch, and then Stuart commenting that he had like an inner teenage spirit. And I think that's so true. When I think of the word mensch, I could be wrong. I usually think of it in the context of a young man. You're telling, oh, you're such a mensch. Marc had a spirit of a young man, as a kid, childlike. And so I think that's just so appropriate, and I just wonderful to think of him like that. So this morning, I just jotted down a few things. You can read here. It's 8 in the morning, the middle of May. I'm writing you now just to brighten your day. Tampa is warm, and I like where I'm living. There's beautiful scenery all through the evening. I hear that you've moved way up to heaven, deep in the clouds. Your family is here for you now, and we are so, so very proud. Yes, and we all love you so very much, Dad, and though we're all very sad, you gave us everything that you had. And that was more than enough. And for those of you with good taste, will know that that is a ripoff of Leonard Cohen, who my dad and I loved and were obsessed with. And the story of how we realized that about each other is an interesting one. It's incredible. It dates back to right after the 2016 election. Kate McKinnon on Saturday Night Live, who was playing Hillary Clinton at that time, started the show singing Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah, because Leonard Cohen had just passed away. And it was, of course, I'd heard that song. You know, who hasn't heard that song? But I didn't know anything about Leonard Cohen. I didn't know who he was. I knew nothing. And but that song was powerful, the way that she performed it, and it struck something in me. And in the weeks that followed, and in the months, and in the years, to my wife's 4 years, I developed well, I should say this, I watched that performance on YouTube while I'm working, and I would just listen to it, and I let over and over again. And then, as YouTube does, the next songs would play, the next videos would play. And I was hear a song, I'd turn it back, I'd listen to Kate McKinnon doing this song. But then eventually I kept hearing these other songs come out, and it just dawned on me. I said, what am I hearing? This is the most wonderful melodies and lyrics. And I developed the strangest spiritual connection with these words, and I'm not a spiritual person. And so the weeks go by, the months go by, and I'm at my parents' house in Cleveland, and I hear my dad singing something, and I think I know what that is. And it was a song that was a pretty obscure Leonard Cohen song. I didn't know that it's obscure because I didn't know anything about Leonard Cohen. I mean, I started listening to all his music, but I didn't know what was popular, what people knew. So then I start to chime in on that song, and the next thing you know, we have this conversation. And he, of course, growing up in the 40s and beyond, and he was aware of Leonard Cohen, but he didn't get it. Turns out that he did not develop a love for Leonard Cohen until Kate McKinnon's performance. And he did the same thing. And the two of us became utterly obsessed with this music and this poetry. And it was a superbly strong bond until the very end. And one, the rabbi mentioned this, but one of my fondest memories, and there's too many to think about, was when we took a trip to go to a Leonard Cohen museum, exhibition in New York. It was just such a wonderful time. We got there, got off the planes at 6, 7 in the morning. We stayed at a hotel right next to the museum where it was, and we were first in line. We got in there and had the entire place to ourselves. We were sitting in this big room with all these videos everywhere, and had the whole place to ourselves, and we loved it. It was an amazing day from morning to night. We went to everything, we did everything. And then as we came down the stairs, it was a 3-story place. We realized there's now hundreds, or I don't know, many hundreds of people there. We were just so fortunate to have that place to ourselves. We spent the night there. We went again the next day. We didn't have enough, so we spent so much time there. It's a memory that I'll always remember. And generally, there's a universe, or I was even thinking of this term that's been used, a multiverse of stories to tell. It's too much, and it's too overwhelming. I can't begin to start, so I will limit it to just a few general themes. His strength, his sense of humor, his kindness. I'll start with the strength. It kind of mixes in a little bit of humor too, but Stuart was right. That's a great story, that the zip line. Because it encapsulates, yeah, he's sometimes, there were some things he could be a little timid of and kind of freak out. But in these final moments, in this final 6 months, I've never seen somebody so strong. I wouldn't be that way. You know, we don't know how Amos would be in this certain situation. But he was stoic, he was strong. I couldn't believe it out of anyone. And even if he wasn't, it would be okay. That's a hard thing to go through. But he just went through it. Didn't complain. Didn't cry. He was remarkable. Strength, and I would tell him that all the time. And when I cried the hardest was about a week ago. I came in, and I'd spent so much time with him over the past 6 months and over the past many years. He was by far my best friend. We became best friends. I don't know when that sort of happened, but we became best friends and we talked about everything and anything. So I was there. He was not responsive. The line was there, nothing. and we knew this would happen at some point. I was talking to him the whole day, and I spent all day with him. I have luxury, I could just kind of work anywhere and sit down next to him, just do that for months. And talk to him. I would just lie there waiting for him to wake up and come to. In this one day, there was just nothing that whole day. The next morning, I'm there again talking to him, and I'm just telling him, like, Mark, you are so strong. I can't believe this. Who are you? And just how you've gone through this. You're just doing it, And then he motions over to his bicycle for his strength and his humor. And I noticed I said at the beginning too that he had a great sense of humor. I did not say, and this is a theme, that he's good at telling jokes. He's terrible. He's terrible. And it's too bad. Well, I guess not. We enjoyed them. But he was funny. This guy had and I didn't think about it consciously until more recently. But the reason we all liked him, the reason we can tell those stories about how bad a joke teller was, he had the best sense of humor. You can say anything, and do anything. He is into it, and he likes it. And so I'll tell you another story on that. And about his strength. So after that little muscle move, it turns out that over the course of the next few days, he started to come to more. He came back, and he would wake up, and we'd talk a little bit. He wasn't really able to talk too much. But so we'd sit there, I'd sit there, and when he would awaken, I would start talking to him and doing my best to communicate with him. And there was one time where he was sort of awake again, and he's himself, and you can see. And he had a difficult time to speak in this moment, but he was communicating, and you can tell what he wanted to say. And so Zach came in, said, Zach, get in here. My mom, and we might not have been there yet, but David was still in Chicago. So I'm like, David, you gotta get David on the phone. Mark, look, we got David on the phone. And David's like, I love you, and all that stuff. And then my dad is, because he couldn't speak so well, he was mumbling a little bit, making some noises. And I said, David, let me translate this for him. I've been with him a long time, I know what he's doing. And so my dad starts saying something like, David, you were always my second favorite son. And he starts laughing. And there's other jokes and stories that I can tell that are actually inappropriate. But the days after that, he had this strength. He mustered himself outside. We didn't think he'd be waking up, but he goes outside and sits there for an hour. And I made a much funnier joke at that time that I could tell you about. Right now, that he was bawling, he was cracking up. His sense of humor, the things that he could laugh at was just amazing. So he's bad at telling jokes, great sense of humor, and strength. And when we were receiving that bad news in the doctor's office that day, my dad and I already knew this was coming. We weren't too surprised by it. But you don't like hearing it, especially when they put a timeline on it. And so he said, it's spread. It's not really anything we can do. So I said, well, how much time do we have? And you don't know what they're going to say this time, unless you go through it. Now I know. But, I maybe hope 2 years, 3 years, something like that. You don't know. And the doctor said 6 weeks to 8 months. It's a bell curve. My dad was pretty old, pretty thin at the time. That's hard to hear, but his reaction, this is why you shouldn't be memorizing jokes, you should just go with wit. He said, well, and everyone's looking at him, he's like, I guess I never did like long goodbyes. So, and of course, he was the kindest person. I've heard from a few of his friends already, and I'm sure I'll hear this more, that he was just the kindest, nicest person. I can't imagine if someone has a story, I'd love to hear it, that he ever upset someone or got them angry or made them feel bad. Maybe it happened. I don't know nothing about it. He was just, you want to be around him. Everything you do and say is fun, and he can make you enjoy it. I don't know if he believed that or not, but he put it out there. And he loved us boys, and we could do no wrong, nothing. We could mess up anything. I could come up here fall on my face and, I don't know, do everything terrible. And afterwards, or I could do great, doesn't matter. He'd say, oh, who cares, fall on your face, that's a good thing, they like that. And he'd mean it. And in the same breath, he'd say the exact opposite thing. If I did a great job, he'd say, that's great, you didn't fall on your face, that would have been terrible. And he'd speak out both sides of the mouth with the kids, and he meant it 100%. He couldn't comprehend anything was ever negative about us, no matter what. I wish I had more examples here, rather than just making them up right now. But I think that and he was the dad. We talk about these parents now that get their kids too many trophies and stuff. I think he started it, and he was the original. I had a trophy. I had trophies that I didn't earn growing up, but I love those things. In my case, maybe it instilled self-esteem, or maybe it instilled the need for constant affirmation. Both, maybe, I don't know. But the things that I'm doing well in my life, having that constant support is the foundation of everything. So I will go back to that story when we went to New York to that Leonard Cohen concert, and not concert, museum. And so he was flying from New York and I was flying from Columbus, and we got on the airplanes at similar times. His flight took off a little before me. And so I sent him a text message, which again I was ripping up. One day I'll come up with my own poetry. You guys wait and see. But I ripped off Leonard Cohen, who had written to his muse, woman named Mary Ann, on her deathbed. He wrote a letter. And I did a rip on it. I said, well, Marc, and this is from May 10th, 2019, so almost exactly 3 years ago. Well, Marc, it's come to this time, and we are really so excited to go to New York City. And I am about to take off, and I think I will follow you very soon. I'm so close behind you in the air that if you stretch out your hand, I think you can reach mine. But now, I just want to wish you a very good journey. Goodbye, old friend. Endless love. See you down the road.
Well, I appreciate that Rabbi, Uncle Howard, both my brothers did all the heavy lifting talking about my dad today. You guys, everybody here knows who my dad was. There's not much more that I can really fill in because he gave so much to all of us. So I'll just say a few things about what he meant to me. And I know Robbie felt the same way, and I know David felt the same way, but my dad was my best friend. My dad was my best friend, and we were his best friends. And I know a lot of people out there right now can probably think that my dad was their best friend and he was theirs. That's just how he made everybody feel. But he really was. He was also the dad that every son, I think, would love to have. He taught me how to play golf. He taught me how to play baseball. We traded baseball cards. And then I tried to take that to the next level. He taught me how to play golf. I tried to take that to the next level. Every Wednesday, he took a half a day at work. And every Wednesday, when the weather was nice, I knew he was gonna come grab me after school and we were gonna go out and play golf. And aside from the half days on Wednesdays, he was a dentist for 38 years. I don't think he ever missed a day of work. He always showed up, every single time. He hated to let anybody down, and he never let anybody down. He also was very instrumental in helping myself and Rob and David start our publishing business. And one day, we were trying to think of different ways we could start a business and how we could make money on our own. And he said to me, sell information. And I said, sell information? What, like insider trading? What do you mean? And he said, no, sell information. Put on paper something that other people would want to buy, how to do this or how to learn that. And I thought, okay. And so we came up with a couple ideas of how to or teaching somebody something, and we came up with, one of the ideas was how to train, how to exercise for sports. And so we put together a little pamphlet, and my dad would go to work and he'd make copies on his copy machine. A couple of pages that we had researched and put out, Rob had written. And now here we are, like 23 years later, and we still have a publishing business that Rob is running, and it's given us a lot of great moments and great times. But it all started with my dad just saying, sell information. He always had great ideas. He came up with ideas for everything. We created a weightlifting tool together. He had invented different kinds of toothbrushes. And he was always inventive in the backyard, coming up with creative, hardware, different ways to lay out his plants and his flowers, which I know we're gonna miss. But I'll always remember the family trips we took. We went to Hilton Head, where he and I played golf. It's the golf capital of the United States. And then years later, I won 2 tickets in the Masters lottery to go to the Masters. And so, of course, who do you think I would take of anybody in the world but my dad? And then years later, we went to Las Vegas to gamble on the Masters and pick our favorite golfers. And so golf was something that my dad and I it was a special bond that we could just get out in nature, which he loved, spend a couple hours together, no TVs, no nothing, and just spend time together. And I know that every time I play golf or watch the Masters, for the rest of my life, I'll be thinking of my dad. We went to Texas together and got tacos and looked at Western wear. He came out to visit me in London, where he went as a college student. He took a semester off and went to London, and I followed in his footsteps to practically the same exact neighborhood that he went. And so he came and visited me with my mom, and then we went to Italy, and it was wonderful. Family trips to Toronto. We went to Florida. Like I said, he was my best friend. And then he got cancer. The deadliest kind. And he never once complained, and he never once said, why me? Never, not once. He took it like a man that any son and any friend and any person would be proud of, to have a deadly disease happen to them. And I'm proud of him. And I'm proud he was our dad, and I'm proud he was my dad.
Each of you has precious memories of Marc. We take a moment now as we silently compose the eulogy of our own hearts. Yehi l'ratzonim reifi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May not only the words that we speak, but even our most precious meditations and our private memories be acceptable to you, our God, our Rock, and our Redeemer. Amen. We ask God to receive Marc's soul with the words of El Malay. Please rise. המלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת מאיר ברוך, בן גניסה שפרה ואפרים פישל, שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. O compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Marc B. Price, Mayor Baruch, son of Genisa Shifra and Ephraim Bishel, Shalach L'olamo, who has entered into your eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us answer, Amen. Our service continues shortly at the cemetery, and the family will invite you to join them back at their home this afternoon until 4, and this evening we'll be at the Western Reserve Memorial Gardens on Chillicothe Road, and Shiva will be until 4 today, and then from 6 to 8, and tomorrow from 1 to 4, and from 6 to 8 at the Price residence. Our service here is concluded.
I ask those who are pallbearers to step over in this direction, please.
The Rabbi mentioned the interment is going to be at the Western Reserve Memorial Gardens. We ask that those who are going to that service, please return directly to your car